A very good morning to all of you who have joined us, and also good evening or good day wherever you are. Depends. Thank you so much for joining us. I'm Luke, and I'm responsible for training and tech support for Asia Pacific region. Um, Before I begin with today's webinar, I would like to start off with some housekeeping stuff. Um, on the browser that you're watching this webinar, on the bottom left corner, you will find something called live, and next to it, there is a red color antenna icon. Make sure that it is in red if you would like to watch the latest broadcast, or if you want to recap something that I said, you can always, of course, use the scroll bar there, and yeah, you can go back and watch. Watch the previous recording. But if you want to watch the latest broadcast, please make sure that it is in live. And then on the bottom right corner, you will find the captions, CC. This is where you can enable captions or subtitles. You can also click on the settings icon, and you should be able to change the captions or the subtitles into the local languages, which I think today is just Chinese. And on the top right corner, you will find an info icon and also a chat icon. And this is where you can submit your questions. So once you click on the chat icon, you have two tabs, which is featured and my questions. If you click on my questions, and down below you can enter your name. We recommend that you enter your name and you ask the question. But however, if you want to ask anonymously and you don't want me to tell your name out, it's totally fine, of course. You can also ask questions anonymously. Just don't use any name, just type the question and you can send it as well. Yeah, whenever your questions are submitted, I will receive them and you won't immediately see them in the featured tab, because I will only publish those comments or those posts which I feel is valid for everyone else. So yeah. Besides that, I think that's pretty much it. So let me switch to my PPT. As you guys know, today's topic is for today are basic rules of networking. And when I say networking, I'm talking more about basic rules of MA networking. It's not really the general networking, the IT, so as to say, because if we have to sit down here and talk about the general IT networking, this could take up a lot of our time. And honestly, there are lots of resources online. You could go to Google or YouTube, and you can find so many resources related to this. At the end of this webinar, I will also recommend a couple of books that I almost religiously follow, which have very good quality of information related to networking. So that will be the first topic, basic rules of MA networking. What are the rules that you need to follow? And then the next topic would be about the MA network infrastructure. This is about how, let's say, the MA hardware and software, how is this working together in order to establish a network? So we will take a look at a couple of points in this one, and then we will see some recommended practices. I will not spend too much time here because there is there is again some material on the website. So and also we are going to have the e-learning course about networking, and all of these are covered in great detail. This is in the pipeline at the moment. We still haven't published it, but if you're already part of e-learning, you will be enrolled into this course as soon as the course is available. If you don't have an e-learning course, please sign up. You can send an email to your distributor, or you can send an email to elearning@malighting.com. So yeah, so I will spend a quick few minutes, maybe a minute, on the recommended practices, and then we will see what's new about grandMA3 networking. Not again everything, but we will just see some important elements about what is new in grandMA3 networking. And then following that, we will take a look at connecting to non-lighting equipment. So how can we trigger or control, not really control, but yeah, I think you can say control third-party or non-lighting equipment, non-lighting software from grandMA3 software. So yeah, I hope I can spend more time on this one, because This gives me the opportunity to show you how we can troubleshoot stuff and what we use or what I use as a personal preference to troubleshoot networking problems that we face normally. So basic rules of networking. One of the basic rule is that every device in a network should have a unique IP address. So no two devices can have the same IP address. This goes kind of without saying. And when you're assigning an IP address to the consoles or to the MA devices, you can use this IP address, which is 10.0.0 until 10.255.255.255. So you can use this entire range. And of course, the subnet mask for this kind of, when you're using this kind of an IP address range, has to be 255.0.0.0. In networking terms, or in general networking terms, this range of IP addresses fall under Class A IP addresses. So let's say I have two consoles and I connect them via Ethernet cable. So then I can have my first console as 10.0.0.1. And of course, the subnet mask, I have to take care of it as well, that it is within the Class A subnet mask. And for the second console, I can use 10.12.55.96. And normally, when I show this to people who are not really into networking, but probably just started off, they get a little confused because they see that only the first octet is same and the next three octets are completely different. And the general idea is that this shouldn't work, but that's not true because we are using a Class A IP address. The rule of Class A IP address is that the first octet, which means in this case it is 10, the first octet must be the same. And furthermore, it has to be 10. You cannot use just any number here. The first octet must be 10 because that is one of the private IP addresses from Class A range. So the first octet must be 10, and the next three octets can be whatever you want. So of course, I say whatever you want, but it would be nice that you organize it with a proper structure. So yeah, we will. We can use this kind of an IP address, and the next kind of IP addresses are you can use 172.16.0.0 through 172.16.255.255. So you can use this whole range as well. And again, take note of the subnet mask, which is very important, 255.255.0.0. Now, if you take a look at my consoles here, you will see that for my first console, I have used 172.16.0.1. And for the second console, again, if you notice, the first two octets are same because we are using a Class B IP address. The rule of Class B states that the first two octets must be the same, and the next two octets can be anything. Again, also notice the subnet mask. So for Class A, when I'm using this range of IP address, you have to have just the first octet as same. And when you're using Class B IP address, you have to have the first two octets as the same IP address, as the same number, sorry. Also, when you're using this kind of an IP address, you cannot use any number you like. You have to use 172.16 because, again, this is one of the, I think I can say a slot, or this is one of the pieces that was taken out from the Class B range to be able to use for private networking, which is when you are building a LAN within a location. So now you can also use Class C IP address. So when you're using Class C IP address, I think now this is more familiar to you guys that the first three octets must be same. This is a bit of a tongue twister for me. So the first three octets, so 192.168.0, and here as well you see the same numbers, and the last octet can be anything between 0 to 255. I say 0 to 255 for all of these numbers as well, but quite honestly, you can only use from 1 to 254. This is because certain numbers are reserved for, let's say, administrative purposes, for example, broadcast or so. So yeah, if you notice my consoles here, you will see my first console is assigned the IP address 192.168.0.1. And for the second console, like I said, the first three octets are exactly the same. And the last octet, I can choose whatever I want the number to be. So So yeah, this falls under class C, and the rule of class C is that the first 3 octets are same. So for class A, if you're using class A IP address, the first octet should be the same. If you're using class B IP address, the first 2 octets must be the same. If you're using the class C IP address, all let's say the first 3 octets must be the same. So these are some basic rules. Oh, by the way, I'm talking about MANet3. So when you're trying to use MANet3, these are the IP addresses that we allow you to have. And also, we highly recommend that you use class C IP address, or let's say class C range of IP addresses for MANet3 protocol. Of course, class A or class B works as well. Especially this is needed when you are in a IT infrastructure. Maybe you are in a theater, or you are working in a let's say a TV studio or a news channel and so on. Your IT, or let's say your networking is already designed by someone else, is designed by your IT team. So, and maybe in your network, they only allow you to have class A IP addresses in order to accommodate lots of devices. That's also fine. So you can also use this. But we recommend that where it is possible, we recommend that you use class C IP address range. So now when it comes to ArtNet, the usual, or let's say the typical IP address range, the IP range that people use is 2 dot. If you notice, the first octet is same, so this means it falls under, obviously this falls under class A range. So the rule of class A states again that the first octet is same and the next 3 octets can be anything. So like you see here, for my MANet, I'm using these IP addresses, and for my ArtNet, we are using 2 dot range. So I can use 2.0.0.1, and here I can use 2.23.57.1. So so yeah, that's for the ArtNet range, and then we have this special bunch or special range of IP addresses, which is 169.254. I put AB and XY because this is a special range. The reason I put AB and XY here is because it's not something that you can decide. These range of IP addresses are normally they are assigned by the console by itself, or by something called as a DHCP server. I will talk a little bit more about DHCP a little later, but just take note that this range of IP addresses is not something that you can assign to yourself, but this is assigned by the console itself. I will show where this is done later. I will show how this is configured. But yeah, if you see this range of IP address, if you don't see any of this, but you see 169.254, don't worry, it's all fine. It's this is also an acceptable range of IP addresses, but this is done by something called as DHCP, and DHCP stands for Dynamic Host Configuration Protocol, and we will take a look at it later. So now one of the rules that we kind of religiously follow in networking when it comes to MANet is that no cable or no Ethernet cable can be longer than 75 meters. 75 meters is the maximum that you can go. So now when I say 75 meters, or let's say this rule actually applies for flying systems, like where you're doing a tour every day, or rental companies, so where you are putting cables out in the open air and you're going to remove them. In this case, you have to use yeah, let's say a cable that is not longer than 75 meters. But when it comes to theater installations and so on, normally the IT department follows a different kind of, or let's say they follow a more better standard of cables, like solid cables. And in this case, it's fine that they run cables for more than 75 meters. But even in your theater or in your TV studio, when you find a point from which you can plug an Ethernet cable, again, even from there, do not have the cable longer than 75 meters from that point to your console. You can add a switch in between so that you can have more, let's say, longer cable, but do not add those small jumpers which is a female RJ45 to a female RJ45 connector, and you connect them and people think that they can get then a longer cable. No, this is not possible. This doesn't work that way. If you want to extend the cable, then you must use a switch in between. or a booster. Let's see. And the next rule is that all Ethernet cables must be at least Cat5e or higher. And again, this rule kind of applies for MANet3, also MANet2 as well. MANet2 was able to work with also 100 Mbit bandwidth, but for MANet3, we require at least 1000 Mbit or 1 gigabit. That goes with my next rule, which is the minimum bandwidth that is required for MANet3 to work is about 1000 Mbit or 1 gigabit. And for this reason, you need at least Cat5e or higher. So Cat5e, Cat6, and so on. And the next, it's not, so the next rule is that all devices must be connected to access ports and not uplink ports. So normally when you're using a network switch, this shouldn't be a problem. A proper managed professional network switch, usually all of your ports are access ports. You wouldn't have any uplink ports. Normally you would find uplink ports only on routers or wireless routers. You would then have these uplink ports, but either way, you shouldn't connect any MA devices to the uplink port. All the MA devices should be connected to the access ports, even if it is for web remote, or it can be for anything. For all purposes, you have to use the access ports. So the next rule is that other network protocols must be separated from the MANet traffic. So in a network switch, let's say you have let's say in a network you have ArtNet running, or streaming ASN, or other video protocols, or other audio protocols, or even the internet itself. You have to separate all of it from the MANet traffic. This is to, let's say, reduce, or let's say avoid any latencies in the traffic. So yeah, make sure you usually the way people do this is by using a different switch altogether, which is really good. But you can also do this in the configuration of the switches. You can create VLANs, which is virtual local area network. So LAN is local area network, but you can create something called VLAN. You can look it up online. It's VLAN, virtual local area network. So by having these, you can basically have different, let's say you can create two switches virtually inside one switch. So yeah, that's another rule. And here are some not really rules, but some ports, so that you can take note of them. And when you're actually building a network, and a main network inside already existing infrastructure, you can tell them that some basic ports that you will have to have access for would be port 21. This is used for FTP for grandMA2. The reason I put grandMA2 is because pretty much all of our grandMA3 hardware can boot into mode 2 as well. And when you boot into mode 2, you will then, let's say you want to access FTP, which is basically to be able to access the hard drive of the console. Then you need to have port 21 open. So yeah, you can type the IP address of the console, and then you type :21. Then you can access the hard disk of the console. So this way, if you want to copy all the show files into another hard disk or into a USB stick, this is the quickest way you can do it. And when it comes to grandMA3, we use port 22. It says SFTP. SFTP is basically same as FTP. It's just that it's more secure. It's a relatively modern protocol when you compare to FTP, and it's yeah, let's say relatively secure in order to do this file transfer from console to the hard disk or into the computer. And then you need port 80 for grandMA2 web remote. This is kind of new for a lot of people, because normally when you're doing a web remote, you would just type the IP address of the console in a web browser, and you would get access into the web remote, or the web remote API of the software for grandMA2. Normally you wouldn't have to type 80, but for grandMA3 you are typing 8080 in the browser. So normally for grandMA3 to get web remote, you type the IP address : and then 8080. and then you access the web remote. So people are sometimes a little confused because why do I have to enter this address and I never had to use this number? Because the reason is any web browser by default takes port 80. So when you are actually typing the IP address of the console of grandMA2 console, and when you press enter, it's actually utilizing port 80. That's the reason you don't actually have to type this number. But for any other port besides port 80, so any other port from port 1 to 65,536, you have to use colon, and then you have to specify that particular port that you want to access. So for that reason, when you're using grandMA3 web remote, or when you want to use grandMA3 web remote, you have to specify this port number. So IP address colon this port number. And just for your information, if your system is going to use ArtNet, you have to have this port on TCP and UDP open, because this is for, let's say this port is used by ArtNet. We will take a look at this port a little later when we are trying to troubleshoot our network. But yeah. So MA network infrastructure. So all devices need to be part of the session to be able to communicate. So what I mean by this is when you have two consoles and you plug an Ethernet cable between both of them, this does not mean that they are able to work together. Okay, they can communicate. They can communicate some basic stuff like what is your IP address, what is your name, and so on and so forth. But when you actually want both of them to work together in, let's say, to be able to create a multi-user session platform, then you have to have a session. So just because they're part of a network does not mean that they're able to work together. They have to be part of the session. So, and the next rule is, or the next point about MA network infrastructure. Oh, by the way, yeah, so this just a small graphic to show that it has to be part of the session. The next thing is that every session needs a master. So in this case, I'm assigning this as a master. So just to represent it, I'm using a blue star. I will tell you, or you will understand later why I'm using this color. And every session needs also a session index. This is not something that a user can control. So normally when you're building different sessions, the session or the console itself automatically gives itself a session index. Yeah, so just to isolate it from the other sessions in the network. And so this is what a session needs. A session needs a master, and the session needs an index, a session index. Now, every station, when I say station, I'm talking about each individual device. So it can be the console, it can be the nodes, it can be the PU, whatever. Any MA device is called as a station in networking terms. Now, every station in the session must have the same session name. So here in this case, I'm using a session name as lighting. There could be a different session within the same network which are doing video. So there is another console within the same network, but part of a different session, which is taking care of video. So that's the reason if you want to join a lighting session, you have to make sure that the session name is exactly the same. And of course, the session index is also the same. And the next thing is that you have to have the same location as well. So you, for example, here I'm putting the location as main stage, and here the location is wrong. It says area 51, but that's not the location if I want to be part of the session. So that's the reason you cannot join this session when you have a different location. So you have to correct it and make sure that the location and the session name is also the same for all the devices within a session. And the last thing is that the streaming version, or let's say the software version, should be the same. What I mean by streaming version is that the first 3 digits of the software must be the same. So for one console, let's say for the first console, I have 1.1.4.2. For the next console, I can have 1.1.4.3, and it would still work. We don't say this is recommended, but it would still work. But you cannot have a different number here or here. So the streaming version, or better, software version of all the devices in the network must be same. So yeah, that's another key components of an MA network infrastructure. And one session can have up to 250,000, roughly 250,000 parameters. The actual number is about 264,144 parameters. This is 2 to the power of 18. But in general, you can have up to 250,000 parameters in one session. Again, make sure that it is a gigabit bandwidth. It's not just a regular or a 100 Mbit network. It has to be a 1 gigabit network. I think that's pretty much it. Let's. So what's new about networking in grandMA3? By the way, I'm not sure if I'm talking too fast or so. I don't see any questions. If you guys have any questions, please you can just post them. Again, like I said, you have, if you click on the messages icon on the top right corner, you will have 2 tabs, which is featured and my questions. If you go to my questions tab, you can then on the below, you can type your name, or if you want to, if you don't want to identify yourself, you can just type anonymous or so. And then you can post your question. We recommend that you let us know your name so that, let's say, if I'm not able to answer any questions, we can then respond to you through your distributor and yeah, at least that way you get an answer. But again, if you don't want to mention your name, that's absolutely fine. You can just post as anonymous. So if you have any questions, please do let me know. So what's new about networking in grandMA3? Again, this is just a short topic. I don't want to spend too much time on this one because I would like to spend more on connecting to non-lighting equipment or softwares using grandMA3. So on this topic, first of all, the nice thing is that changing an IP address does not require a restart. So when you change an IP address on a console, or when you add a network card on PC, let's say you have a laptop and you just added your network adapter, let's say USB to Ethernet, or which is not recommended, but let's say you are using this and you suddenly create IP addresses. These IP addresses, these new IP addresses, will immediately pop up automatically in the software, so you don't have to really restart the software or to refresh it. Hash keys to protect the session. So normally what happens is when you create a session, you're using a default hash key. So hash keys are basically in order to protect your session from someone else joining your network. So this can also be, let's say, you are already running a huge show, something like a Eurovision Song Contest, and it's not nice that I bring along my on PC and connect into your network and join your session. So if you don't want this, then you can create your own hash key with a password, and you can then exchange that hash key across all the devices. And yeah, it is far more secure, and you will there will not be any way that someone else can intrude. I think that's the right word. So let's say come into your network, break into your network, let's say. So hash keys are there to protect your session. So I think that's nice. And the network status. So when you're connecting a device, or once you are connected to the other MA device, you have different statuses. You have master, slave, and so on. So the statuses are here with a slightly different color representation. So normally when you start a session, when you start a session, you have you become the master by default. And if you're the only station in the whole network, then you are called as an idle master. Oops, wrong animation, but yeah, you are called as an idle master. An idle master is a device which is alone in the network. So it's a master by itself. If you are part of the session and you are the one who created the session, and maybe some other devices in the network has joined your session, you will then become a global master. So because you are a global master and other devices are connected to you. If you're standalone, if you're not running a session at all, which is fine if you're using just pure DMX, but if you want to use any other protocols like ArtNet or so, you have to have a session. But if you're not using any of them, you can run in standalone mode. In that case, you will see that the session color is in red. By the way, I will show where you can see these colors. in a minute. But yeah, so if you see something in red, it means that you are standalone. You're not running any session, or you are not part of any session. Next thing is actually black. I had to put it behind a white background because my presentation is in black color. So if you see that the session color is in black, this means that it's in the process of connecting to another master, or you are in the process of starting a session. So that's what it means. And then you see green. This is when you are slave. So you are not the master. You are part of another master. So yeah, that's that's what let's say some small things that are new in grandMA3 networking. So let me quickly switch to my software. You will have an interruption in my stream, in my video stream at least, because I'm going to switch my devices to the to another application. So you should be able to see my grandMA3 software. So yeah, this is where you will see those colors, like I was saying. So blue is a global master. So I will also know what is my status over here. So like you can see that I am a global master. So also you don't have to come into this network window. Normally when you're on your screen 1 or so and you're working, you can always take a look at your status. So when it shows as blue, it means that you are a global master. And again, when it shows as white, this means that you are an idle master. So you're not, nobody is in your session, and so on. So yeah, that's where you will see the status. So now onto the interesting part. At least for me, it's a bit interesting. This is about connecting the grandMA3 software to non-lighting softwares or non-lighting equipment. A short disclaimer here. I just want to keep it very clear that I'm going to use a software that is not an MA software, of course. I'm going to use a software, and the only reason I'm using that software is because our distributor in Singapore, Total Solution, is also happened to be the distributor of this particular software. And since we live within the same, let's say, same island, at least they were able to help me set up this software. That's the only reason why I'm using this software. So rather than streaming my software, grandMA3 software, I would rather stream my complete screen 1. Give me a minute. So that's that. And here, stop sharing and share screen 1. So first of all, when you want to connect to another let's say equipment or non-lighting or even lighting equipment, you want to use, let's say, ArtNet or streaming ASEAN. One of the first rules is that when you want to use ArtNet or streaming ASEAN, you have to have your own session running. You have to have a session running in the software. Doesn't matter if you're not using MANet, but you still have to have your session running. So yeah, my session is running, and it's running on 192.168.0.1, so that's fine. So now what I would do is I will go to my DMX protocols, because I'm going to make use of ArtNet protocol. So let's go to DMX protocols, and we have ArtNet here. Oops, it's already enabled. I was testing it. So first thing is you can select an interface. If you haven't heard already, normally in grandMA2, or you are pretty much limited to use just port 2 on a console for ArtNet. But for MA3, you can use actually any port. You can use port 1, 2, or 3. So you can select which port, which interface you want to use. Since I'm on PC, I'm going to select this adapter. But yeah, you can use whichever interface you like. So I'm going to select this particular interface with this IP address. So, and then next you have enable output. I will do it in a minute, and enable input if you are taking ArtNet input. And then we have some other settings. So first of all, over here, you have the first line, which says ArtNet data 1. So this is a name. You can give it whatever you want. And this is enabled. So this line is enabled and it's working. And the mode is normally, I think the default is auto. But I will switch it to broadcast because I don't have any other devices subscribing to my ArtNet data. So I'm just going to switch to broadcast. If you're doing a unicast, you can then enter the particular IP address of that particular device or a node, and you can then you will then be able to send it only to that particular IP address. Until you set an IP address here, this will stay as red. This meaning you're not actually outputting anything, even if the output is on. So I'm going to set it to output broadcast or mode broadcast, and yeah, subscribed nodes is basically when if you're using third-party nodes and when they are subscribed to your particular broadcast, then you will see how many nodes are subscribed to you over here. So the local universe, this is basically the universe in my patch. So, oh, by the way, I have to show you my patch first of all. The other software that I'm going to use today is basically the Pandora's Box media server. So that's what I have patched here. By the way, this is a standard grandMA3 library, and so yeah, I've patched it on channel 1. And I think this is 97 channels. So yeah, that's all I have in my patch, nothing much. And also take note that you use this particular mode, which is V5 video lighting if you're using Pandora's Box. So if not, yeah, it doesn't matter. So let's go to the ArtNet once again. So menu, TMX protocol. So like you see, since it was patched on local universe 1, so I set it to 1 and amount just 1 universe I'm sending, and net 0, ArtNet subnet and universe, and ArtNet absolute. So these are basically what this is basically, ArtNet universe starts with 0. And after 15, you then have to set the subnet, ArtNet subnet, and then you change the universe and so on. But if you don't want to deal with all of this, you can just set the ArtNet absolute to, let's say, 52, or a better number is 42. So you can then see that automatically these numbers are adjusted. So I think this is a great feature when you don't want to deal with all these hexadecimal numbers. So that's pretty much it. So I think my settings are right. So before I actually tell the other person to check whether they're receiving my signal, what I would always do is I would always use this software called Wireshark. Wireshark is a great tool when you're doing network analysis or network, let's say, troubleshooting your network. This is a great tool. This is the one tool that I would always use whenever I'm doing any network troubleshooting. So you can download it from the internet, and it's a free software. It's an open source software, so you can download it for free. One thing a little annoying maybe is that it kind of keeps showing your, let's say, it wants to update the software very often. So that's a good thing, but yeah, can be a little annoying sometimes. So once I open the Wireshark software, by the way, I won't be teaching you how to use this software. It's a lot to learn about this software. Again, there is a lot of very quality material available on the internet. Some are free and some are you pay something and you learn the software. But again, it's a great tool to troubleshoot your network. So if you're someone who want to get into networking especially in lighting or so, I would highly recommend this tool. And I think this day and age and going forward, I think networking is become pretty much like a basics when you want to get into lighting. So yeah, in this tool, what I would show is that, so over here it shows my network interfaces. So I'm using Ethernet 2, like I said before, and in Ethernet 2, like you saw, there is my MANet and also my ArtNet. I don't want to use all of them, or let's say I don't want to use both of them. I just want to use my ArtNet. So my ArtNet IP address is, so I type host space 2.168.0.1. So what this would do is then it would just show the packets that are within that IP, or let's say whose host is this IP address, and from that interface. So once you type that, you can just select the interface that you are sending, and then you can press enter. Oops. So now it is showing some some data, and like you see, that's the packet number, timing, source. So source is basically that's the right IP address, and destination has to be a particular ArtNet IP address. And if you see here, this is obviously none of these are ArtNet IP addresses, but don't worry about it. And when you come to protocol, you should see ArtNet protocol here. And so we don't see anything that's related to ArtNet. So we can see some packets, but obviously this is not ArtNet because it doesn't say ArtNet here. So what am I missing? So let's go back to my grandMA3 software. Oops. And what I didn't do is that I didn't enable the output. So let's go ahead and enable output. And actually, I would like to show you while this is still here. So let's see if I can. OK, so hopefully then you can see some ArtNet data coming in over here. So once I enable output, so you should see some ArtNet data and some DMX channels. So when you click on ArtNet, let's take a look at the software. So once you click on ArtNet, this is an ArtPole packet, and then we have the DMX channels. And over here, if I open up this range here, this section here, you will find all the ArtNet, the DMX data that is being transported. And you see that the source is my grandMA3 software, and it is being sent to 2.255.255.255. This is basically a broadcast. So what this means is that my grandMA3 on PC software is sending it to every device within that range, within 2 range. And yeah, so also take a look at this. Remember the ports that we were talking just a few minutes ago. I said 6454 is the port that is used by ArtNet. So we are using the right ports. So I think then I'm doing everything right from my side. Then we can tell the other person. So you can see that I'm sending ArtNet packets. Could you please check on your side if you're receiving the signal? So let's switch to, or let's open the Pandora's box. It takes a while to open on my computer, so I've already kept it open here. So just quick few minutes on Pandora's box. What I had to do was, first of all, you will see that I'm using, or it has detected the right IP address. And in the configuration section, I'm no expert in this software. I had to learn this from someone. So all I know is just this particular things in the software. So you have to have the ArtNet active input. You have to enable it. And then you have to select the right interface. And I think that's pretty much it, if I'm not mistaken. Or also, at least that's what you do in Pandora's box. So basically, any software, doesn't matter which software you're using, make sure that you're using the right interface and that your ArtNet settings are enabled to receive ArtNet from grandMA3 or MA device. So once I have this, let's go back to my grandMA3 software, and we know that I'm outputting some data. So let's go to here and let's close this box, and let me clear the screen. So all I need is normally just a smart window. So usually when you're dealing with media servers, people tend to use smart windows because it's quite easy to be able to control them from here. So let's open groups, and that's my Pandora's box fixture. So you would deal with it just like how you would deal with any other lighting fixture. You would select it, you'd go to dimmer, and you would say full. This apparently is the opacity, if I'm not mistaken, opacity in the Pandora's box. So when you set the dimmer, that's open, and you go to Gobo, and I think it is clip directory. Yeah, so in clip directory, this is basically referring to these directories here. So clip directory 0 is this directory, which says 1920 by 1080. So that's what entry 0 means. And entry 1 is referring to some videos that we have downloaded. So clip directory entry 1. And for clip selection, I'm going to select one of the clips, and you should see some output here, hopefully. Yeah. Oh, I think I have to set this as output. Yes. So the moment we change something here, you can see the output. So yeah, that's pretty much how you would connect grandMA3 software to other third-party softwares. I'm using, again, like I said, I just want to make it clear, very clear, that the reason I'm using Pandora's Box is because this is one of the softwares that our distributors in Singapore happen to use or distribute, and they were able to help me set up this software. And yeah, that's the only reason why we are using this. If not, yeah, the setup, basically the rules pretty much apply for any other device that you would use. Yeah, let's do a short recap of this section. So first of all, you have to have your session running. And again, if you follow the rules, you have to make sure that the MANet is separate from any other protocols in the network. And that's the reason I'm using 192.168.0.1 for MANet. And if you go to my DMX protocols, and for ArtNet, I'm using a 2-dot range. And then over here, what I did was I enabled output, and I left everything as it is. And over here, I've set the mode to broadcast. And again, my amount is one universe, because I'm sending the one universe from my patch. And the local universe is 1 because I've patched Pandora's Box on universe 1. And yeah, the ArtNet is 0 over here. And that's, by the way, this is the exact same ArtNet settings, ArtNet 0 on the Pandora's Box as well. I think, if I'm not mistaken, I was told that on Pandora's Box you have the ArtNet as 1, I believe, by default. I don't know, but anyway. By the way, when you're using Wireshark software to be able to troubleshoot your network, you can see here, just to take a quick look, you can see whether or not, sorry, it's not the ArtNet, it's the DMX channels. When you open when you select one of the DMX channels, when you're troubleshooting, if you open the ArtNet packet here, ArtNet section here, you will see that you are sending to universe 0 of ArtNet. So this is, yeah, this way you know you're sending the right universe. If you're sending multiple universes, you can just select the next packets. It should be within the next packets that it is universe 1 or so. But since I'm sending only one universe, so you would see universe 0 constantly. So this is another way to troubleshoot which universe you are actually sending. So yeah, if you have any questions, please do let me know. And in the meantime, maybe I can talk about these ones over here. So a broadcast threshold, what this is basically when you have, let's say, you're sending the same universe to more than 5 unicast devices. Let's say we are doing a unicast here, so we are sending it to one particular node, and we are doing 5 different unicasts, and all of them are the same universe. This kind of makes no sense, because what's happening is the grandMA3 software is taking that information from that universe and it is sending it again and again and again to 5 different, or 5 or more than 5 times to different devices. This makes no sense or let's say this takes a lot of energy, let's say technical energy, and for this reason, what then happens is after 5 universes, it would then switch to broadcast. So it would no longer be a unicast, it would switch into a broadcast, so that you are then doing doing a broadcast. So you can change this as well. In grandMA2, you are not able to change this. This was by default 5, but in grandMA3, you can change this to 3 or whatever number, anything between 0 to 100. And then ArtPole rate is basically a packet in the ArtNet. It is sent over the network to gather some information about the existing devices in the network. So let's say you have some third-party ArtNet nodes or ArtNet, I think also ArtNet fixtures. What it then does is it takes the information, it takes, okay, what IP address you're using, what is your name, and so on, all this information, and it comes and it shows in the software. So if you go to nodes, it would show up over here. So it would look something like this. So it would show the subnet, the IP address in the net, and what are the DMX output and input configuration of your node, and it would kind of show it over here. But for this to happen, take note that your devices should be using ArtNet version 4. If not, this would not work. So yeah, that's ArtPole rate. So ART-pole rate basically is saying is that this ART-pole packet is sent every 3 seconds. Actually, if you come back and take a look at our network capture here, you can see, so that's an ART-pole packet. Let's go all the way to the top, so it's easy to calculate. So where did ARTNet start? Maybe, okay, so that's my first ART-pole packet, if I'm not mistaken. So this started at 55 seconds and exactly, oh, so let's take a look at the next ART-pole packet. So you see the next ART-pole packet was sent at 58 seconds. Let's take a look at the next one. And this one was sent at 61 seconds. So every 3 seconds, this ART-pole packet is sent. So every 3 seconds, that's the reason when you connect an ARTNet device into your network, you are not immediately receiving the ARTNet because it takes a little while to receive all of this data. And then once it is synchronized, let's say in other words, it's then continuously sending the data. So yeah, that's what ART-pole rate means. So I think that's pretty much it from my side. I think Pandora's box is yeah, so it's still running. If I want to stop it, what I can do is I can say dimmer is 0. I can also do a fade. So let's switch on the program time. I think to I don't like this. Let's see if we can get exactly 3 seconds. So we have 3. Oops. Okay. So 3 seconds. And then let's switch it on. So you should see a slow fade. Yeah. Yeah. So by the way, that's the opacity. If I haven't mentioned, that's when you're changing the dimmer value, you are actually changing the opacity of the layer. So that's pretty much it from my side. If you guys have any questions, please do let me know. If not, yeah, that's pretty much it for today. I hope that was informative, and I hope you guys enjoyed this session. And I hope you guys are doing well and you guys are safe wherever you are in the world. By the way, one of the questions that I think it's a frequently asked question whenever we do networking training is technically what exactly is happening inside a master? What is this master and slave thing? What is happening on the slave? What is not happening on the master? What is exactly happening? It's pretty simple, actually. So when you have a master, all the protocols like ARTNet and so on, or any protocol that you're using, even MANet and so on, all of them are actually being output from they're being output from the master. And the slave is, although you connect them, you won't be able to output it from there. It's being output from the master. We have a question. Just wondering about the recordings, especially from the previous sessions. Yes. So today is my last, or tomorrow is my last session actually. So tomorrow is the last session for this series of webinars. So after this, we are then gathering all of the videos and all of the comments and emails that you have provided in the Q&A section. We will then send it over to you guys. Just hang in there for maybe next week. You should receive all the 3 webinar recordings. The first one might not be the best one because the first one had really bad audio quality, but I hope this one is better. This one and the last one were better. So yeah, that's the reason we haven't sent it out yet. But yeah, all of these recordings will be sent out hopefully next week, because this is pretty much the end of this webinar series from APAC region. We'll probably be doing different other webinars depending on the questions that you ask. But besides that, this will be the last webinar. Tomorrow will be my last webinar. So after that, yeah, I think this is a very valid question, so I'm going to publish it. So yeah, tomorrow we will have, yeah, sorry, don't know what I was saying. I think, yeah, tomorrow is the last webinar, and we will then send out the rest of the videos. I think that's a very good question. Yeah, like I was saying earlier, so this master and slave thing. So master is basically where you are, where the outputs are actually done. Your ArtNet or timecode and all of these are actually being output from the master. In case when the master fails, then of course the next device, the next station that becomes the master is then outputting it. So that's the difference between master and the rest of the devices in the network. It's also to do with the commands processing. So whenever you type a command, even on a slave console, it is actually processed at the master section or at the master console. It's a little, I've seen a few, I wouldn't say weird, but I've seen a few interesting network setups where, so normally what I've always done is, so let's say you have a console, that's the master console, and then you have your slave console. What I've always done is that I would program on the master console, and when the master console fails, you would then switch to the backup console. But I've seen a few setups where people actually use the backup console to program, or let's say to do their work, and the master console actually is just kept there. They don't use the master console. And it's very interesting when I asked the reason why, because they said when a crash happens, and this is true, whenever a crash happens, it's actually the master that's going to crash. So they don't want to be on a console which crashes. This is an interesting idea, but yeah, so they would use on the backup console to be able to program their show. And whenever the master crashes, it crashes, and they just have to reboot it, and then they join back into the session. But their backup console on which they are working, that wouldn't crash. So that was an interesting setup, I would say. Definitely an interesting setup. So I guess that's pretty much it. Oh, we have 4 more minutes. So if you guys have any questions related to networking, any question at all, you can throw it in. You can also ask any general networking questions, why something is the way it is. We can spend the time that we are left with to discuss about it. Oh, by the way, I think this is very important. Oh God, why didn't I mention this? I think this is very important. The reason I'm able to control the Pandora's box here is because normally the on PC wouldn't have any parameters. So I need a MA hardware to be able to do this. And that's the reason if you look at my network, I actually am using the full size along with my on PC. Although my on PC is the master, I'm using the full size in the session so that it can then provide me the parameters. So if you take a look at my system, let's go to more system info. You will see that I have available of 12,288 parameters. So this is coming from the full size. Yeah, that's the reason I'm able to do the Pandora's box. So if you don't have any parameters, you won't be able to do this. So in other words, don't try this at home if you don't have an MA hardware. So yeah, I think that is very important. So we have a question: connecting to nodes over wireless. It is possible. Is it possible? I think that's a great question. The answer is you shouldn't do it, and it should not be possible. It might work, but you shouldn't do it, because like you just saw in the rules, that the MA3 uses 1000 Mbit gigabit for as its bandwidth. And if you're using a wireless router, at least I don't know of any wireless router that can provide you a bandwidth of 1 gigabit over wireless. I don't think so. At least there is no wireless router in the world that I have seen which can provide 1 gigabit over wireless. Usually the most I have seen is probably 400 Mbit, and this was a lot already. I think these were some unified devices, and these were doing 400 Mbit, and that was crazy. So yeah, MANet3 requires 1 gigabit network, and Wi-Fi usually does not provide this speeds. So yeah, for this reason, you cannot. It is not recommended at all to use nodes over wireless over Wi-Fi. It might work. You could probably see the devices in your, let's say over here, you could probably see your devices in your network menu, but you can maybe connect them, but this is absolutely not recommended at all. Because at any given point of time, whenever the MANet3 recognizes that there is less bandwidth, it would just pull itself off from the network, from the session, sorry, and then this could be a loss for you. So this is absolutely not recommended. Yeah. One day when the wireless reaches 1 gigabit, I don't think it's just 1 gigabit. I think it should be more than 1 gigabit, because the thing is, even if, let's say one day in I think the word is utopia, let's say one day we reach this stage where our wireless devices are finally doing 1 gigabit over Wi-Fi, even then it could pose a problem, because either you should be in a complete vacuum where you are just doing you and your wireless router and your console, because if you're in a place where there are other mobile devices or there are other people, it could then cause, the word is, I think it's interference. It could cause the interference, and this could again cause drop in the signal quality. So yeah, even if we reach that place where you would have 1 gigabit bandwidth over Wi-Fi, this could pose a problem. So if we reach a place where you could do 1 gigabit continuous stream, then yes, I don't know if we would recommend it, but you could probably try it. Yeah. So another question, just wanted to use it to unlock parameters for visualization. Okay, so maybe this is, you have a node somewhere on the other side and it's already part of a session, and maybe that's the reason you want to use it, but just wanted to use it to unlock parameters for visualization. Yeah. And this is not possible. I mean, again, it could be possible. And by the way, once it's part of the session, you could get the parameters. For example, if you see now I'm using the full size, like I said, and how can I show this? So I have 12,288 parameters. So in the network, let me go behind and let me, oh, actually I can do it from here. I can just unplug my cable, and you should see that my full size is not in the session. Yeah, so my full size is not part of the session. So it's just me, and I am the idle master. And you can see that this is in gray color. And so I'm alone in the network. So I'm using just the on PC. So I shouldn't have any parameters. But since I've already created a session with these devices, I have these parameters. However, if I were to stop this session and restart the session, then I would lose all these parameters. Or if I restart the software, I would then lose all these parameters. So let's try and do that. So I will switch that off, and let's see. Oh, it still has 12,288. So this should kind of theoretically, maybe let me refresh my system monitor. I think it still shows. Let's see if we can actually control it. That would be nice. So select, oops, so let's say clear. So select the fixture and let's say closed. Is the timing? So let's switch off the timing, and yeah, so this is not working. So I don't have parameters, although it shows, okay, so we found a bug in the webinar. So it's showing a wrong information, but like you see, I'm not able to control my Pandora's box. So let me put my the full size back in the session. So I'm an idle master, and I think the full size is also an idle master. Then I became a slave, but that's fine. It doesn't matter. So you can see this here under on PC, I have become a slave and the console has become the global master, but doesn't matter. Like I said, you would still have the parameters to control it. Yeah, I think we can see the output already. Smart. So it's selected and I can then do full. Oops, why is it? I think I have to be the master for this, obviously. Yeah, because the full size is not sending any, ArtNet. So I have to be the master. Like I said, this is one of the other things. So let me go to the full size. Let me switch it off and then join this session. So now my on PC is the global master and the full size is a slave. So yeah, there you go. So we should then be able to change the clips. Oops, what happened? Yes. So let's select the fixture and say full. And clip directory is 1. Clip selection is also 1. Let's see if that works. That's not working. Why is it? Oh yeah, it's working. So I think there was a little bit of delay of 3 seconds or so, but it would then work. Yeah. It's because of the program time that there is a delay. So let's change the entry. So yeah, there you go. That's working. So I think that was a nice opportunity to see how we can troubleshoot. So guys, it is 12:06, at least here in Singapore. Thank you so much for joining us for this webinar. I really hope that was informative. Again, to address the question, when will these recordings be made available? Tomorrow is my last webinar, and at least last webinar for this series. So after this, we will then send out the recordings to all the email addresses that were submitted through the Q&A session. By the way, if whoever has asked this question, if you haven't already submitted your email address, if you've already submitted it, it's fine. You don't have to send it now. But if you haven't sent your email address, you can maybe send your email address. Don't worry, I won't be posting it, publishing it, but you can send us your email address. But if you've already sent it, don't worry, we will send it over to you guys. So I think that's pretty much it. Thank you so much for joining us for this webinar. Again, I hope this was informative. If you have any questions, please do get in touch with your distributor, or you can send an email to tech.support@malighting.com. So with that said, take care and stay safe.